right, welcome to Ag Attack here on KDNE 91.9. This is the last Ag Attack that we're going to have, but I'm Cassandra Kennedy.
And I'm Jordyn Atwater.
And we're going to kind of recap the semester. Oh. So if you know about agriculture and politics, that's what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
And we've talked about a wide variety of subjects ranging from the genetically modified organisms,
yep,
GMOs, and we've talked about water and farming,
Chipotle. We've talked about all the candidates' positions on agricultural policies. We've had a guest speaker from Doan talk about environmental science and what we're doing in our efforts for conservation, basically, and we've hit a lot of things.
We've hit a lot of things. We tried to go vegetarian for a week, and that didn't work.
That didn't work at all. Actually, that was supposed to be last week, and I'm just going to say I can't do it. I can't. It's a mentality.
I thought I could. I don't think I can do it at Doan. I think if I was back home, I probably could have.
I just can't do it in general. Like, I literally, I think it's a mental effort to do it. I think that was something that I needed to consciously have been thinking about it all the time. Yeah. Because I would just go to a restaurant and I order something and I'd be like, oh crap, this has a little bit of meat in it. And then I'm like, well, too late now.
I would even go to places and order something thinking it didn't have meat in it and then discover it had meat in it. So I don't know, did that give us, so to recap on that one, did that give us some compassion for our vegetarian friends and maybe
I think a little bit.
Understand them a bit more?
I don't know if it gave me an understanding, just like for the sense that like I love meat, so I just don't know how to like understand that. But I do have more of a compassion in the sense that is a difficult lifestyle. I think what would be difficult is if you're starting. Yeah. Like if you get into the habit of it, sure. Like, I mean, what does it say? It's like you need like 4 weeks to make something a habit. Yeah. Like, you do something for a month, 2 months, and then that's just in your daily routine. For me, for a week, it was like super hard to like remember, oh yeah, I'm doing this vegetarian challenge. Like I would literally have to write it on my hand or something just to see it. So I think I've gained more compassion in the sense that I'm like, oh yeah, that's difficult.
They're dedicated to it.
Yeah, they have to.
They're not just doing this for fun. Like this is a lifestyle change.
And the options out there, like, there was one day I remembered I was a vegetarian for the meal, but I looked at the vegetarian option and I was like, no.
Yeah.
That is nasty.
Same.
So I do give them credit for it. Do I understand why you do it? To a point, like I can understand if you're doing it because you don't feel like you can kill an animal, sacrifice its life to sustain your own life. A lot of people I've talked to, that's their personal opinion, but I can't understand the fact where that's like, it's so much healthier. Like, yeah, you'll lose weight if you don't eat meat. That's true. Like, you're gonna lose muscle as well. Like, protein builds muscle. Yeah. So it's just one of those things like, okay, if your intents and purposes is to be really healthy, a balanced diet is what you need to do. Not just cut out protein, Yeah. And you can get protein from other areas, but you got to be really careful with how much you're doing that because, I mean, you can really shock your system. Coming from a biochemistry, future medical official.
I mean, like, I have a cousin who lost, 60 pounds in a year from turning vegan, not just vegetarian, so he cut out, all processed foods from his diet, too. He's very determined, he lost a lot of weight, and he felt a lot healthier, but at the same time, he started losing hair and teeth.
Yeah.
So
there's a fine line that when you're really messing with your diet, and that's just, I mean, that's personal opinion.
Yeah.
And the one thing I do not understand veganism though, that really.
Well, and
that's a hard thing for me to understand.
But now, after he listens to his doctor, and he had a chicken for a while so that he could eat the eggs of the chicken.
Yeah.
But I mean, it worked for him, and his child's brilliant. So yeah, they're raising the child vegan. He's only 1 year old, so he's a big boy too. For I don't know. He's a big baby.
If he's still one though, most babies' fat, that's still coming from the mother if they're
she's
breastfeeding
vegan too, though.
Yeah, but that's the thing. For babies, even though they're not eating meats, they're not eating a lot of product that, I mean, besides maybe baby foods, but at 1 year old, you're still being sustained by your mother in a sense. So until he gets to more your 4, 5, that'll be interesting to see his growth rate in that sense. Just being, I mean, I think it can be a very healthy lifestyle. I'm just curious because you're not getting calcium, and that comes directly from a lot of milk. And I mean, right now he's naturally getting that from his mother, but what happens when you're 4 or 5? That's a good question to ask. I don't really know the answer.
But that's also an interesting point to bring up about like milk and calcium, because if you actually look at milk, our body is not supposed to be able to digest it. It's something that we've evolved to do over time. And so like our body naturally rejects milk, and as we grow as a population, more people are becoming lactose intolerant because of it and going back to our roots. And so that's also like an interesting plug in there. Like, shouldn't we just eat what our body's naturally meant to process?
To
like
a point. But like, if you're thinking, for me, when I think about it, okay, for those individuals, for women, when we hit our 20s, so when we hit 25, both me and Cassandra, our bone density is going to start to drop off. When we hit 45, you hit 50 and you're getting into menopause, severe drop off. Those are when you get older, when you hear about people breaking their hips at 60 and those things, that's bone density. A lot of that is from what you had supplemented as a child with calcium. So for us to prevent, like, it's kind of like a bear storing up for winter. Okay. The more that it eats, the more fat he's going to have to burn. Okay. For us, the more calcium that we have in our system later on in life, the less likely we're going to have those brittle bones, and you're not going to have osteo.
So I should start drinking a lot more milk right now.
Like right now, like, well, and that's what I learned in my anatomy class, and I learned in physiology. I don't drink a lot of milk. Just here at school, I don't like really the milk that we have at our school here. And I never really liked milk when I was growing up. You know, I drank it just because I knew I needed. I was always told, and like I had a grandmother that had, you know, those issues with, you know, osteoporosis and things like that, where your bone density is, you can easily break a hip, break bones. So I'm making it my effort. Like, I try to drink a glass or two of milk every single day that I can. Because, well, until I'm 25, when you're 25, that really, you do stop. 25, 26. So we have 3 years left to get as much calcium as possible in our bodies.
I feel like when I ran track, I definitely drank milk a lot. Like after practice, that was my go-to drink.
Well, I love chocolate milk.
Yeah.
And that's still good for you. Actually, that's really good for muscle.
Muscle after. Yeah, and that's what I would drink after track. But ever since then, I just have stopped. I don't know. I try, like, for me, water seems to be more important. And so I consciously try to drink a lot of water during the day. Yeah. And, like, I don't have time to drink milk.
I know. And sometimes that's a problem, but, you know, I'm always, water is my go-to. When I'm thirsty, I reach for water. But now I've consciously made the effort to make sure that, or I'm taking calcium supplements. Like, while I'm at college right now, like, when I go home on the weekends, I always have a huge glass of milk before I go to bed. Yeah. But now, and it's not that I really enjoy that huge glass of milk. Like, now I've kind of grown to like it, but I literally will take, like, a calcium supplement because I want to make sure that I'm getting, and no, I'm not overdoing it. Like, I'm not like, you know, popping calcium pills here, but at the same time, I want to make sure that when I get older, I don't have the same problems that my grandmother had. So
that's fair.
So that's where we get into this point of, like, when you're vegan, like, I mean, if you want to do calcium supplements, but I don't feel like most people, when they go vegan, it's because they really want the most natural route possible. Yeah. So it doesn't make sense to do supplements.
And there's other ways to, like, get calcium. Like, I know they drink almond milk, and so you can, that has some source of calcium.
I have to drink a lot of almond milk, though. Yeah.
And, like, the other kinds of milks. I like almond milk, though.
I don't mind almond milk. It's just a little too sweet for me. I'd rather have just regular milk then. But, so, anyway, sorry, we kind of got off. But, I mean, it's a good conversation to have. So, yeah, me and Cassandra went vegetarian, or attempted to go vegetarian for a week. So that was kind of interesting.
It lasted about 3 days. We both stopped at relay.
Mine ended the first day on accident. I just forgot. Yeah. That was my problem. I kept on forgetting. But, so to recap what we've done this semester, one of the very first shows that we did, do you remember what show that we did?
GMO.
We did do the GMO and the Chipotle.
Of course
we did. I actually had written an article for the Don't Al about GM over it. Yeah. Because I'm so over this debate. But we were talking about how a lot of companies now are going GMO free when they're actually not. It's really just a marketing scam in my eyes.
Everything's fine. Like when Target, it's good for them. Like, I'm proud. Target came out this week and said that they support transgender people and that anybody can use the bathroom that they identify with in their gender, which is, like, phenomenal for a company that a year ago supported anti-gay laws. Yeah. So it's like, 360-degree flip, but they got a lot of bad publicity from it. And so for me, I really just think this transgender thing is marketing. Like, I mean, it's not like it's bad. Like, cool social marketing, social change, whatever. But at the same time, like, their intentions aren't to be like, yeah, we're all inclusive.
Well, and that's the thing. I mean...
And that's what I think the GMO thing is the same way. It's like, oh, we don't actually care about the health issues in this. We just care because you seem to care.
Exactly. Well, and that really is what it is, because they even said on their website, we're doing this in response to the needs of our consumers.
Yeah.
Which... I can understand you do have to adopt as a business practice, but if you're really concerned with your consumers, wouldn't you have been on the cutting edge of understanding what GMOs are? And if you really did your research, you would find that there's no substantial evidence out there that proves that GMOs are bad for you. I mean, everyone loves to blame things on GMOs. Oh, my kid has allergies.
Oh my god, I thought of you. I was reading something about weed. Like, it was like the weed debate. And somebody put on the comments, like, yeah, just make sure that you keep Monsanto out of it so we don't have any GMO in our weed. And I was like, what? That doesn't even make sense. Do you even know what a GMO is? Do you really think they're going to make GMO strands of weed?
Well, let's be completely honest. Most weed now is like...
It literally is a GMO.
Because they genetically modify it so the THC count is not high. Like, they literally are doing what you're saying is wrong. So if you really want to do that, you better go to the weed that's on the side of the road growing naturally.
How do you think, like, when you go into... Well, you've probably never been in a weed shop. But when you go into a weed shop, there's different, like, strands. And I'm telling you, not all of those strands are natural. They did something to make it like that. That's called science. That's what we want, is research with marijuana.
Yeah.
Like, then you put in, like, that was just the most ignorant thing I think I've ever seen.
Well,
not really. I've seen much more.
I've seen much worse.
I've heard of much worse. Don't colleges yik yak. I've seen much more ignorant things.
Yes, I have as well. So, but it just kills me when people are like, oh my gosh, GMOs. And then you ask them, what does GMO stand for? You don't need to explain to me what a GMO is. What does it stand for? Are you kidding me? You can't even say genetically modified organism. Everyone knows the word genetics, usually modified and an organism. And then you can get the gist from there. So it just bothers me that the lack of education and the fact that there's no reliable sources that these companies are using or putting out for their consumers to be like, this is why we're basing our decisions off of this. I mean, that would be like me going in and starting a business and saying, I'm only going to serve you a lettuce that comes from Blue Hill, Nebraska, because I think it's healthier for you. But I have nothing to back that up. Yeah. People look at me like I'm crazy. And, like, the problem is, I mean, I would be crazy anyways to do something like that. It's horrible marketing. I don't know much about marketing, but I would assume that's bad. But it's the same thing. Like, you can't go to a Chipotle store. I would ask someone, I would love to talk to the business owners and the CEO of that company and really understand what their concept is for providing a good meal. Because it also comes back, you weren't doing everything to provide a good meal. Clearly. You had, Escherichia coli outbreak. You had a retrovirus. Like, you had all these things.
Within, like, 2 weeks of each other.
And you caused hundreds of individuals in the area.
Yeah.
One small but very populated area. So when we're talking about you're really doing everything for your consumers, maybe you should step back and look at the whole process of what you're doing.
Yeah.
Because clearly you're focusing so much on the marketing that you're not getting the other aspects of it. So, I mean, I just thought it was super hypocritical, and that's why I had to use my voice, people. I had to use it.
That's why we talked about GMOs. And we also, like, brought up the fact that, you put pharmaceuticals into your body all the time. We don't even think about Tylenol. We don't think about Motrin. We don't think about Xanax, if you're even, like, getting to that point. But as soon as it's a GMO, we're like, whoa, wait, what? Even though, like, technically, I would counter that GMO is more natural than a pharmaceutical drug.
Oh, I would agree. Holy. I mean, to be completely honest, a GMO, like, these are not things that are grown on petri dishes that we just randomly pull out. I mean, yes, mass-produced tomatoes, strawberries, yes, all that happens.
Growing.
But they're still growing in a natural way. But we have a large population to feed. We have to figure out ways to increase yield. Yeah. And a lot of that is coming to genetics. But that's also like natural selection. That's a part of a genetically modified organism.
It's a part of us. Like.
It's a part of life. That's the circle of life right there.
Yeah.
You can't say to me that and also it comes in, okay, so you're so concerned with what you're putting into your body. Okay, what are you using for your shampoo and conditioner? Do you not realize that some of the acids that you're putting can seep into your brain? Also, do you color your hair? Do you dye your hair? Do you get a tattoo? All these things, I mean, maybe I guess I'm the type of person, if I'm going to go for something, I'm going to go full on. Yeah. I'm not going to just say like, oh, this needs to happen because selectively, I don't understand that mindset.
Like we talked about this actually on DCTV's Join the Conversation last night. The debate was over marijuana, and it's like, well, the U.S. government almost seems to be selectively doing that right now with marijuana and alcohol, because it's like, well, if you're saying alcohol is legal and tobacco is legal when tobacco is proven to like kill people, but marijuana has no proof of that and like has little causes of death from the actual substance. Yeah, that's very hypocritical for our U.S. government even to say like, you can't do this one but you can do this one. Like, pick and choose. How do we choose that?
Well, and that's the thing. I think the problem is history.
Yeah, it is.
Let's say it all goes back to the historical. How was our country founded? Our country was founded on tobacco growers. Yeah. I mean, if it was weed, it would be a different story.
We were founded in the 1900s. There was a huge political scare. It was it was a scam. It wasn't real, but this man went around the United States telling everybody that marijuana caused like death and distortion of fetuses and all of this stuff. And he spread that rumor across the United States and got it classified as a class 1 drug. And because it's a class 1 drug, it's in the same class as cocaine, heroin, LSD. And
the very hardcore drugs.
The hardcore drugs that, because they're in that class, can't even be researched. That's how dangerous they
and it's been removed. It was, what was it, in the late 90s?
No, it's still a class 1 drug.
But then how can they sell that in Colorado if it's class 1 drug? They shouldn't be able to. It has to have been moved down.
That's why it's technically against federal law, and why Colorado it's a cash-only business. Because it's an interstate law. So if the people, like, that's why they can't take credit cards or anything like that, because they don't go through the federal banking system.
Well, and I just know from research, I know that, the research department that I've worked in, we work on detection of different analytes, and we've worked on detecting different coded drugs, and some of them are but to even go through the process of applying to do those research is so expensive and so rigorous that it's almost not even worth it in the long run. Yeah. So, but yeah.
So that's a whole nother part of agriculture. Look at that. Everything goes back to agriculture.
It really does.
Weed
it really
growing
does.
And the cash business behind it.
Exactly. Gosh.
But we will come back and talk more about things we've talked on over the semester of Ag Attack when we get back from this quick break. And if you ever want to text us, we're not live on the show, but we would love to hear your input on our Twitter account at KDNE or at Jordyn Atwater, Jordyn with a Y. Stay with us because we'll be right back. And we're back with Ag Attack here on KDNE 91.9.
Hey everyone.
The Edge of Indy. Woo woo. Woo woo. This is our last Ag Attack, and as we've been talking, we've just kind of been rehashing our old arguments and getting super passionate about them.
Yes, I'm always passionate.
We're kind of a broken record here, but they're things that were important to us, and we hope were important to you and that you've learned about.
Yeah.
So some other agriculture and politics things we talked about.
Well, the next one that we talked about, I remember our second show was PETA put out all those allegations about the FFA, National FFA organization, and that really got me upset just because it's so false. Like, I just hate when people put out all this false information to promote their cause. Can you not promote your cause? I mean, and this also just kind of falls in line with politics. Like, I hate political ads that attack another group. Yeah. Same goes for this whole PETA thing where they attacked the National FFA organization. Well, I don't care if you want to further your cause to be a vegan, fine, but do it in a way that's respectful to other organizations. I mean, that's like our society in general. Why do we always have to put others down to further our own agenda?
Yeah, that's very true. But I mean, like, PETA's just known for doing that.
Exactly.
That's literally what they market. Like, one of their Super Bowl ads that got cut, this, like, NFL was like, no, but was how being a vegan makes you have better sex.
Oh, yeah.
Like a legit commercial they made. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't really take anything they say seriously.
Well, exactly, but their tactics that they use for advertising, and I said this before and I'll say it again and I'll always say this, is They use these outrageous statements that they know are false to get attention. Clearly it gets attention because it gains traction on social medias, national news, things like this. It just gains traction. That's how they're getting their name out there and they get their cause out there. Mm-hmm. Regardless of it's good or bad, it's kind of like any advertising is good advertising in their book. Mm-hmm. So, but to me that's disgusting. I'm just like, I can't even. I would love to sit in a room with some of the PETA organizers and just pick their brains. I don't know how lucid or understandable that conversation would go, but
they're probably tripping on that good LSD.
Good LSD. And I mean, I understand the intent and purposes behind the PETA organization. Get that you're, for the ethical treatment of animals. But if you actually went to a farm and you talked to producers, you would see that we do care about our animals. There are the outliers out there. Just like there's the outliers of the PETA organization. Yeah. You cannot judge the whole organization, the whole thing by the one person.
Maybe on this one.
I
feel like if you join PETA, you deserve to kind of be.
I guess a better example would be HSUS.
Okay.
Your local humane societies usually have the right intents and purposes. Yeah. National HSUS usually is furthering its own agenda. Mm-hmm. Maybe we can compare it like that. We can't judge all the smaller entities based off of the one large one. Mm-hmm. So we talked about PETA. I don't think I need to say any more on it. I don't think our listeners really want to hear any more on it because, let's be completely honest, it's just ridiculous.
We'll just end with, you can look up the YouTube video of PETA's sex commercial, and that's all you need to know about them.
Mic drop on that point right there. So then the next thing we talked about was the politicians and their stances.
That was a good one.
That was a good one. That was a really good one. Well, because I really found out a lot about my own party, the Republicans, and their stances on, or lack thereof, of stances on agricultural policies, and just a lack of knowledge. Mm-hmm. I mean, they understand what a subsidy is, but they don't understand how that pertains to agriculture, nor do they take the time to actually learn how it could affect either way. If you promote subsidies or if you take away subsidies, they don't understand what the impact is going to have. But Bernie Sanders does, which really surprised me. I was pretty impressed. As a Republican, I mean, everyone's going to be like, my family and friends back home are going to be like, Jordyn, why are you bringing up Bernie Sanders? And I'm going to be like,
he cared about the farmers.
He cared about the farmers. He has a page about agriculture on his political campaign.
Like, that was his whole thing when he was a senator, was one of his main goals was to help the Virginia farms. Yeah. So I think it's just carrying over into his presidency now.
Yeah. So it was very interesting. But we have all of our shows. They are on.
Hopefully, they're going to be on Doneline's YouTube account this week. They are currently not online, but as soon as the seminar finishes up, you can find all of them online.
So if you want to go back and listen to us talk about the politicians and see exactly what their stances are, because I don't really feel like we need to go back into it. I think there's more important things to talk about, but you can go back and check out all our other episodes to get a more in-depth view on what we're kind of doing for our overcap today. But just to let you know, Republicans, we got a long ways to go if we're going to try to get these people in office. They need to take a little better look at some of their constituents' issues.
Fair.
Yeah, but then the other one, we talked about access. So farmers,
that's right.
Up and coming farmers and what they're doing for their, what is the access that they have and what should our politicians be doing to further access? Because we talked about land prices. Everyone knows land is expensive. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you own land, it's like a gold mine, unless you don't really know what to do with it. But it's expensive to become a farmer now. You have the equipment, you have the overhead costs, everything. And that's where people come in and, I've been questioned before, well, the farmers I know, they all live the high life. Like they buy brand new tractors and combines. Okay, those are not recreational vehicles. It's not like they're having a lot of fun. I mean, if you're a farmer, you love the job that you do. But it's not like we're going for a joyride in the combine, Also, we are producing food, and while we can remain in the black some years, other years, we get hailed out. We have tornadoes. We have, droughts. We have, different problems with if you are spraying. Let's say someone uses the wrong concentration. And hail. Like, all this stuff, wind. can ruin your crops, and then your yield can be decreased. And I mean, just even rainfall, you can have a better year or a worse year. You never know. I mean, we're one of the only occupations where, I mean, besides maybe a weatherman, I guess, a little bit, that are dependent upon the weather really for the outcome of what our crops are going to be.
And, like, I mean, everything is still a business. So
yeah.
Is it really fair of us to get mad if a farmer's doing his job right and is making a decent amount of money?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, do we get mad at business people who are making a lot of money?
Do we get mad at Donald Trump for all the money that he makes?
Sitting on money and, like, not doing anything.
Exactly.
Like, it's just, you know, we should be proud of our farmers if they can be that successful. I mean, they are still doing their job and they're working to feed us. Obviously, we don't want corruption, and that's where, like, we talked about corporate farms.
Yes, corporate farms,
the difference between family farms and corporate farms, and kind of, like, that dichotomy, and how we can't necessarily be mad at the corporate farms because some of the stuff they do is actually pretty good for society.
Yeah.
But they're still, you know, corporation has a bitter taste in a lot of Americans' mouths.
And it always will, just because they do have the capital, they have the revenue, they have the resources that small American farms, family farms don't have. And when you see it just breaks your heart a little bit when you see a small family farm go under because they maybe didn't take business classes, or they didn't manage the farm well enough, or they just had some really bad years in a row and they couldn't stay afloat.
Or a leaf fell into another person's yard and a lawsuit was taken out.
Yeah, we did talk about that. One of my friends was an organic farmer, and their family got sued by the Monsanto company because of, let's see, what is it? The patent rights on the pollen. Well, they had a GMO based plant that they owned the patent for that plant, and that it was a pesticide resistant crop. Well, cross pollination, technically the other plants, the germination cycle, those plants had a strand of patented genetics. So then it comes into it's like a custody battle between two divorced parents, organic farming and corporate farming. Fighting over the one poor little plant that couldn't help anything in the middle because nature just happened to
take its course.
And
that's where you question the ethics of a large corporation when they're willing to, like, carry out a lawsuit when obviously a small farmer can't
prevent that. But at the same time, you do have to admit that they do have a right to protect their investment.
Yes.
To a point. But for a small American farm to make them go completely under, like, let's be honest.
Yeah, unnecessary.
That's pretty rough.
That's unnecessary.
That's pretty rough. But yeah, so we talked a lot about those future up-and-coming farmers and having the help and the grants that they need to get started. And
then we kind of moved on and talked about the education aspect of it for urban schools.
Yes, for urban schools. Yeah, I forgot about that. No, everything comes down to education. It really does. I mean, even when we talk about GMOs, just telling a person what a GMO is and what it stands for, they can make their own decision, and it's a little better educated than, well, Chipotle says I shouldn't eat a GMO containing food, so I'm not going to. I mean, I know we all go out and make decisions, and we sometimes just shoot from the hip. As I like to say, we just kind of go with fly by the seat of our pants and make decisions based off of little information. But we do need to realize that sometimes those decisions can have a lasting impact in a way. And what I meant by that is the education in the classroom is important for these urban schools just to understand where their food comes from. Mm-hmm. They can make better informed decisions on voting policies then when they're older.
And we can care more and be more compassionate.
Exactly.
About it.
Well, and I think it's also there's the flip side then for your more rural schools. We should have more business classes. We should talk more about big business corporations. We should talk more about urban settings, pollution, things like that get just kind of dropped by the wayside in our mainline stream of education. And we have, obviously in my area, we're more concerned with agriculture. I lived in an ag-based community. That's just how things go. Yeah. Education is key though. And that's the same thing for those future farmers. Mm-hmm. I recommend anyone that's going to go into farming, you better have a fallback career. Go get a degree, even an associate's degree. Get something. I know secondary education is expensive, But
it doesn't have to be either. Like, that's also a thing. Like, you can go to a community school even and just get your 2-year degree for... Sure, you might have to take out some student loans, but studies show over and over again that people who take out student loans make more money in the long run.
Exactly.
So you just need to invest in your future.
And also, it's the hiring process.
Mm-hmm.
More and more for our hiring process, we need to have the degrees to make us qualified. So education, like that is getting you on a fast track to getting a future job. Yeah. Not necessarily maybe where you thought you were gonna go. That happens. I mean, a lot of people. I'm going to be an artiste and be an art major. You may be working in an elementary school somewhere as a teacher. You never know. Yeah. Like, it just is gonna change. But if you're gonna be a future farmer, get a degree in something. Because if you need to fall back into business or go back to be a teacher somewhere, at least you have a way to make an income. And you're not having to work a blue-collar job that maybe you would hate. Not saying that blue-collar jobs are awful. Obviously, farming is a blue-collar job, but...
And also make sure you like it before you go into it.
Exactly.
I mean, I don't know. I did an internship this summer, and it was interesting, but it wasn't exactly a passion for me, I found out. And so I'm really glad I had that opportunity to know that's not exactly the direction I want my life to go.
Yeah. And it's always, I think it's... just getting any type of knowledge is important. I mean, we were just talking the other day on our campus. We're making efforts to open up a conversation about diversity on campus. Mm-hmm. And we had an article that was written on our campus that actually raised some really good conversation for everyone. Mm-hmm. But one of the things, our efforts for increasing knowledge on diversity and education is just to bring in speakers that are diverse and just opening a platform for students to talk about. It's the same thing with agriculture. There's a lot of correlations with it. You just have to open up these platforms which start in the classroom at a young age. Yeah. So that was an interesting. I loved talking about that day. That was a lot of fun because especially since you're from more of an urban background. Yeah. it was fun to talk to you about that. Because I remember Cassandra.
We had a guest speaker kind of talk about that, didn't we?
We did. Well, we had family friend back home.
That's right.
Darren.
Yeah.
He commented that they would go to classrooms and talk. They would go into Lincoln and they would go to different schools.
That's really cool.
And they would talk about their farm and different things. I mean, I remember when we were in high school, our FFA program, we would go to the elementary students, and a lot of really, unfortunately for our school, a lot of the elementary students, the families would come in, move in for a job, and then move away. They kind of would bounce from place to place. So a lot of our kids were in the elementary program were the urban kids, the ones that stayed through the school system and went into high school. About half were farm kids, so, everyone had grown up with it. But we would go and we would have a National Ag Week. And so that's where you would go and we would talk to the students on, okay, this is a combine. This is what it does. Where does your milk come from? Chocolate milk does not come from a brown cow. Yeah. Comes from just a normal dairy cow, and then it's flavored. Same that strawberry milk does not come from a pink cow. So, I mean, we have to clarify all these things.
Site, though. That'd be pretty great.
Oh, that would be pretty cool. I mean, but then we'd have PETA on our tail about dyeing our cows pink. So that might get into a different discussion.
Force feeding them strawberries.
Yeah. Well, and then I remember talking about this. There was a bill that was brought up to introduce just agricultural related topics into reading in the classroom. So for state testing, a paragraph about agriculture. That's just exposure right there. Mm-hmm. The bill unfortunately didn't go anywhere, which makes me really sad because it's not a priority, which I understand. We have other issues like Keystone Pipeline at that time. All those things were much more towards the forefront. Yeah. But we still have to do the little things. We talked about this.
To the big things.
We talked about this in our honors presentation. You have to do small things to get to the larger points. Mm-hmm. So little things can go a long way.
Yeah.
And then when you can make those little things happen, it makes life better. So yeah.
But that was just some more recap of what we've talked about here on Ag Attack. When we come back, we're probably going to swerve into more national politics and end on a last little note about the political culture here around campus and whatnot. So stay tuned, and we'll be right back. All right, and we're back for Ag Attack. I'm Cassandra Kennedy, and with me is Jordyn Atwater.
Hey guys.
We've had a great semester talking about agriculture and politics, and we just want to thank all of our listeners for their support especially the ones who would tweet at us and all of our guest speakers.
Dr. Russ Socek, big shout out to him for coming on and talking about Nebraska conservation and Keystone Pipeline.
You made such a good contribution to this project. You really helped us join the conversation.
Yeah, and we also had Brad Jacobowski, who was one of our professors here on campus as well, and he came in and talked about different classes we have to offer at Doane. And he also brought up some really interesting conversations about water conservation, so we want to thank him as well.
Yes, indeed. So now we're going to kind of shift gears, and we're just going to talk about politics, since we've talked a lot about politics and agriculture in the past, but right now there's not anything too big going on with politics and agriculture.
Stuff,
but there's a lot going on with politics. And in case you haven't heard, John Kasich, thank you. John Kasich, I'm the girl.
It's okay. It's okay. You're not a Republican, so I don't expect you to know.
But him and Ted Cruz have come to an agreement where Kasich is going to back off of Indiana. He's not going to spend any resources there, so that Ted Cruz can win over Trump in Indiana, whereas Ted Cruz is going to back off in New Mexico and another state, so that John Kasich can take over those states. And so it's basically, because what's happening in the Republican Party is the reason Donald Trump is winning is because there's a split vote between the Republicans.
Yes.
So half of the Republicans are going for Donald, and then the other half are splitting their votes between Cruz and Kasich.
Yeah.
And so now they're trying to team up together so that Donald Trump does not get the nomination. Basically, they're both to the point where they're like, doesn't matter. Obviously, they want each other to get it.
Yeah.
But at this point, as long as Donald Trump doesn't get it, that's a win for their book. And so it's really interesting because they're basically playing the system. And it's kind of not playing in their favor because Donald Trump has an argument about how the Republican whole primary situation is basically corrupt. And this clearly adds to his argument. And so it's really an interesting debacle on the Republican side. But
what can I say? As a Republican, I am not pleased with how our candidate's race is going. Very disappointed in how things are going, just because I can't see how we want someone in office that has said so many horrible things about women, immigrants, foreign dignitaries, local business owners, about his own family. I just don't understand.
Did you know he has 2 other kids?
Yeah, he has a lot of kids.
I don't know. I know he had Ivanka and the one man, but I didn't. Nope, he has 2 little kids.
He has 3 sons and 2 daughters. How do I know that? From his Celebrity Apprentice show, which also does not show him in a very favorable light.
I used to watch that.
Oh my goodness. Well, some people were. I did hear this argument the other day, because I said I don't think Donald Trump represents himself well. I don't think he would represent our country well. I think some of the things he said would offend foreign countries. And let's be honest, we don't want to get bombed. We don't want to get nuked. We don't want any of these things to happen. We don't want to go to war. We've already tried to pull ourselves out of so many wars. We wouldn't want to do anything like that again. So their rebuttal was, well, Ronald Reagan became president and he was an actor. How did he know anything about politics? I'm like, oh my gosh. Okay. Different time and age.
Ronald Reagan didn't say crazy things. Ronald Reagan was actually a decent president.
There were a few things that were wrong with his presidency, but
you know who my journalism professor, not to get this confused, I don't want you to think who it is, so I'm not going to say names. There's multiple journalism professors, so don't jump to conclusions. But one of them said today that they compared him to Putin.
Really?
And I thought that's actually fairly accurate. That's a good comparison.
Very egotistical.
Yeah, Putin's very egotistical. You never know what he's gonna say next. You never know what he's gonna do in his reign, and he doesn't really listen or care what other countries think.
Yeah.
And that's exactly how Donald Trump would be.
Yeah.
And so, I don't know. That was really interesting.
Well, I think it also is the strange thing that's also happening is Donald Trump is able to mobilize his voters. Mm-hmm. He's able to get them to go to bat for him.
Yeah.
The other individuals that are aware of things, I would like to say, are upset with the candidates that we have left to a point because we don't really for me personally, I don't really like any of our candidates.
Yeah.
I mean, out of all of them, I like Ted Cruz the best just because he seems like he's the one that would be the most level-headed, well, just in a way that actually, Marco Rubio was my favorite, and I mean, I guess John Kasich. Oh, you would be. I mean, I like John Kasich, but I just find he's not that motivational. I don't like Ted Cruz, but out of all of them, he's the one that I dislike the least. If that makes sense.
I don't even know, man. I don't even know on the Republican side. It's a good thing I'm not a Republican because I would feel very uncomfortable voting for any of them.
Well, and I heard a really fascinating conversation that was happening on, I want to say it was Fox. But they were talking about how...
really quality news.
It is a quality news. But there was one really interesting point that was made. Republican Party is upset with promises not being met. With our leaders that have gone and promised things and then have never actually held up those promises. They're just wanting someone that's going to come in and speak the truth. Unfortunately, they think what Donald Trump is saying is the truth because he's saying it louder than others. But it was a good point to raise, though. It's just, I think the Republican Party is just getting frustrated with the fact that...
But oh my God, that's their fault. I'm sorry. I'm going to be this person right now. We're going to get in a little debate.
Okay.
The president can't do anything without the Senate and the House. And the Senate and the House have been in filibusters more this presidency than any presidencies in the past by 8 times.
Yes.
And that's mainly because the Republicans and some of the Democrats, but a lot of the Republicans refuse to let anything go through just because they don't want to see President Obama succeed. That's my opinion, but...
I think there's a point where, yes, maybe they don't want to see President. There's a few. I will say there's a few Republicans that have been very outspoken and very adamant against Obama's policies. Yeah. But there's others, they actually do listen to their constituents, and that's not what the Republican Party wants. The Republican constituents don't want that. It's the same thing when we tried to propose things for the Keystone Pipeline. Republicans were against it. Democrats were for it.
No, it was opposite.
No, Nebraska Republicans were the ones that were leading that fight.
Yeah, but the Democrats in the House and the Senate were the ones who voted against it, and ultimately Obama was the one who vetoed it.
Because we forced him to do that because we said, you have to do this before the next election.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously... that was not going to be a pretty sight for him if he was going to not make that decision. Because he was going to wait for that until after. And we all know how that was going to turn out after. Yeah. Understandably, because it would create more jobs. It would boost revenue for our economy. Yada, yada, yada. Whatever.
But I would like to say that there were quite a few Republicans very much for it.
The only ones for that were the Texas. The ones that are in big oil companies. But there were also a lot of Democrats that were like, this is creating jobs. This can do this. We can also put tax on it. There was a bunch of that going on that was okay. No party was innocent in that. But we can't say that, that was something that also,
Yeah, I mean, Democrats are very much to blame for a lot of it, too. The House and the Senate are an issue in our country, but I'm getting sick of people blaming Obama and being like, he's not doing anything. When you actually look at his presidency and his track record, he has done the most out of a president in the past, 5 years. Well, Clinton could match him, maybe. I would say he's done a lot, and I would agree with the fact that there's been a lot of things that have not gone through from pushback. Both ways, though. I do think Obama has reached out to the Republican side on some things, but then that has also caused pushback from then when we go into the Senate. All these things, there's no reaching across the aisle, really, for both parties. Yeah.
I mean, I guess for me, I am a conservative, but I see the issues. I'm more of a person that I have a lot of conservative views, but I also decide the opposite way on a lot of issues.
Yeah, and like I have some, like I don't believe in raising the minimum wage. That's an example for me.
Yeah.
But I still like, it grinds my gears when people blame Obama when I really don't see it's his fault.
The one thing that I can commend Obama for and that I've always appreciated is his classiness. His class act and how he handles things under pressure. I think he's done a marvelous job at representing himself and our country well.
Mm-hmm. I know, if you go to Europe, like, Donald Trump says, oh, everybody in the world hates us right now. It's actually not true. Europeans really like Obama. Like, they really like him. And, like, that's who I think we should be impressing right now.
Well, I would agree with that. I think honestly, the Europeans think we're kind of a little bit of a joke. Unfortunately,
yeah. But I think Obama's helping with that image.
And I think he is great at public relations in that way. I think he does a great job with representation. Have I agreed with all of the things that he's said or done? No.
See, I love him. I love Obama. I think he was a great president.
I think he's a class act. I can say.
I appreciate like the fact like, yes, he promised to take our soldiers out of Iraq, but when he realized that was a mistake, he was able to admit his fault and send them back.
My question is, as a Democrat, were you in support of pulling out the troops? Sorry,
no.
That's a loaded question. Okay.
Well, that's a hard question because I was never in support of going to Iraq for war.
Okay.
Afghanistan, maybe, yes. And Iran, we didn't even touch Iran, but Iran is where we should have gone.
Yeah.
I don't understand why we started a war with Iraq.
Yeah.
And I thought, battling of presidents right now, I think Bush was one of the worst presidents the United States has ever seen.
See, I don't agree with that, and it's not because I'm a Republican. I think we've had worse, and I don't think he's done any worse or any better. But at the same time, when the whole issue arose with 9/11, both sides wanted something to happen.
And like we went to war and we jumped the gun, and I get that. Like,
and we worked on information that maybe wasn't clear. Yeah. So I mean, at the same point, can you fault Bush for answering to the people's wants for something to happen?
But I can fault him for cutting taxes and then deciding to pay for a war and going continuously to a war that after the initial shock factor, the Americans said they no longer wanted, while cutting taxes, so we had no money to spend for this war.
Okay, but then we can also say though now, when we pulled out troops, it's like this never-ending cycle. We sent troops there because that's what the American populace wanted. That's also what the president decided to do. We've seen now with Obama, we pulled troops, bad things happen.
That was I don't think because we went to war in the first place, though.
But the American populace wanted it. How can you say, how could you not respond? Like, when 9/11 happened, we had people that literally went to go sign up for the military.
Yeah, my brother was one of them.
Because they wanted to be there to fight for our country. The American populace wanted that. There was many people that probably didn't want it. So we go to war, and then, yes, we don't pull out. But then Obama he pulls us back, which was a decision because obviously, yes, it is an expensive thing to go to war. But we pull back. You have an uprising of ISIS. You have all these things that start to happen.
But that's not why he went back.
It's not why he went back, but still the fact is we pulled out and things he saw. Wrong decision. So we send it back in. But people are going to say, well, Bush was the one that, if he would have pulled out, the same thing would have happened in his presidency as it did now.
But see, that's the thing. See, Bush was told multiple times that what he was doing was wrong by chief economist. He fired his chief economist because his chief economist told him he was being dumb. Literally, he fired him for it.
Okay.
He didn't realize his mistake.
Okay.
When people went to Obama and said, this is a mistake, you're hurting the Iraqis, the reason we went back to Iraq was not because of the ISIS crisis. It was because the Iraqi soldiers were not ready to stand on their own. And now the only troops that are there are those helping the Iraq soldiers be able to stand on their own, not in actual combat. There are few troops that are actually in combat.
Exactly.
And therefore, when Obama listened to his advisors and actually listened to that, that's where I think Obama is above Bush.
See, and for me, I can understand where that's happening, but I just think that we missed the fact on, regardless of the timeline, they'll say it's stupid. We had already gone into war in a country that had no issue with us. We did that. To pull out at any time, there's still going to be a fallout.
Yeah.
So either way, it could have happened during Bush's presidency, which I think people would have liked to happen because then it would have compounded the issue for Bush. And then they could have said, well, it was all his fault. Okay, that's fine. If we want to place the blame there, okay. Regardless of when we would have pulled the troops back, some type of fallout was going to occur. And then it doesn't matter. We're still going to have this problem in the future. I mean, people want us to go to fight against ISIS. This is always going to be an issue, but we haven't sent troops to go do that yet, have we?
Well, troops are in Syria right now. On Monday, Obama sent 250 troops to Syria.
250 against...
Not in active combat.
Exactly. Okay, so...
They're again to help the
with
Syrian
the training.
Yes,
with the training, and I think that's phenomenal. And for me personally, what I've been wanting. But it's still like this thing. For me, I get where you think Obama's a better president, and we are going to agree to disagree on this. I don't really think that either one is better or worse. I think both of them have done some great things. Both of them have done some not so good things.
See, I just don't even know what good thing. Other than handling 9/11, okay.
Okay, but then you're also going to say I don't think Obama has really done anything bad. Well, would you not say that as well?
No, I do think Obama has done some things bad.
Okay.
But there's multiple things that I can point to that George Bush W. did wrong. Unfortunately, we're going to have to carry on this argument outside because we have ran out of time.
Oh, okay.
But that is just a taste of what joining the conversation here on DCTV, The Doan Owl, and KD&E has been all about.
Yes.
We hope you've enjoyed our section, and we hope you all have a great summer. Keep listening to some great music heading your way here on KD&E 91.9.